The U.S. Senate has finally approved a measure that will fund a $1.15 billion settlement to pay black farmers who were discriminated against by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. CNN is reporting that the 1997 Pigford versus Glickman case against the U.S.D.A., which was settled out of court 11 years ago under a federal judge's terms, would pay qualified farmers up to $50,000 each to settle claims of racial bias. Tom Burrell, president of the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association Incorporated, spoke to Scotty Reed in August 2010 on Black Talk Radio News and Views about the case.
There have been historically challenges to the African American community to be able to contract, as was given to us after slavery, Scotty. Most notably, there is a lawsuit that is between the black farming community and the heirs of black farmers, because most of the original farmers are deceased now. U.S.D.A., Scotty, recognized and admitted that it indeed was practicing racial discrimination in the area of credit, or denying African Americans the right to contract for credit. And the cumulative effect of this denial has rendered the African American presence in agriculture almost to zero. In 1999, a federal district judge, in addition to Congress, approved what the judge called the largest civil rights settlement in the history of this country. Key phrase, Scotty, if you don't mind, civil rights. Now, we remember civil rights, the movement of civil rights in the 1950s when Miss Rosa Parks said, "I'm not going to give up my seat," as per the instructions of a bus driver in Montgomery. That caused what we call the civil rights movement. Interestingly enough, though, our civil rights as African Americans, Scotty, started almost 90 years earlier in the 1860s. Congress then passed laws that said, Scotty, African Americans, it does no good to simply free them. They must be allowed to enjoy contractual relationships, to sue, and to be parties to contract, as is enjoyed by white citizens for the safety and security of persons and property. As of this date, the Department of Agriculture, which has been in existence since 1862, has steadfastly and continued to deny African Americans their right to contract, whether it's their customers as black farmers, or as we heard a couple of weeks ago, when it comes to their own employees. Equal protection, due process in the law means absolutely nothing, Scotty, at the United States Department of Agriculture.
President Barack Obama on Friday in a statement said that while these legislative achievements reflect important progress, they also serve to remind us that much work remains to be done. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, who was the target of protests over the summer that called for his resignation after Shirley Sherrod was forced to resign from her position with the U.S.D.A. earlier this year, after a manufactured controversy erupted when excerpts of a speech she had given in the 1970s were taken out of context and posted on the internet by right-wing media operative and Tea Partier Andrew Breitbart. In another statement on Friday, Secretary Vilsack called the settlements a major milestone in the U.S. Department of Agriculture's efforts to turn the page on a sad chapter. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who recently won re-election in his home state of Nevada, turning back a challenge by Tea Party challenger Sharon Angle, said the vote gives long-suffering Americans the closure that they deserve. The agreement that we reached shows what can happen when Democrats and Republicans come together to do the right thing. The measure was approved in the Senate on Friday by unanimous consent. However, the measure now must go back to the House of Representatives, and many hope it will be approved in a lame duck session so it can then be signed into law by President Obama. A number of seats were picked up in the House by self-described Tea Party Republicans, and it is feared that the measure will not receive the support it needs when the new Congress assumes power in January. A number of extremists in the Republican Party have long sought to block funding of the settlement, alleging widespread fraud. Back in July of 2010, Representative Steve King, a Republican representing Iowa, who is known for making controversial and racist comments about black people and who also voted against an aid package for survivors of Hurricane Katrina, spoke on the right-wing conservative radio program, The Ben Shapiro Show, about the Pigford case.
And why is it such a bad thing for the country at large?
Because the Pigford Farm settlement, that started back in around 1995, but the mid-90s. Dan Glickman was Secretary of Agriculture under Bill Clinton. There were some allegations made that the U.S.D.A. had discriminated against black farmers and had declined to or refused to provide them the same kind of programs that they may have provided had they been white. And so the allegations of discrimination, we know them. They come up pretty regularly. We saw them out of this Capitol building when the Congressional Black Caucus walked through the Tea Party people. Always allegations, and often there's not much substance underneath that. And in this case, Dan Glickman stood up and told the world that the U.S.D.A. had, in fact, according to his opinion, discriminated against black farmers. That turned into a class action suit, of which there was a negotiated settlement, and that negotiated settlement included allowing black farmers or those who wanted to be black farmers to file claims. There was a statute of limitations on that consent decree, would be the right way to describe that, and around $1 billion was spent and distributed to help compensate for the allegations of discrimination. And I have sat with the individual who administered and dealt with most of that. I talked to these black farmers, and also I had people from Iowa, from my district, whom I know, who kept files on this, that were deployed down into the southern part of the United States to help settle this consent decree. And they came back in the highest percentage of, let's say that the lowest percentage of the claims that they claimed were fraud, but they had to settle anyway, was 75%.
Wow.
Some allege that 99% of this is fraud. We know that there were attorneys advocating within the black churches, especially in the South, telling people, this is your 40 acres and a mule, you'll be compensated for the sins of the fathers of the people that are paying the taxes today. In other words, compensated by the descendants of slave owners and everybody else for that matter.
To this date, Representative Steve King has produced no records or other concrete proof to back up his allegations of fraud by black farmers in the Pigford case, where all claims were vetted and approved by an independent agency contracted to oversee the processing of claims. The same measure passed by the Senate on Friday will include $3.4 billion to fund a separate settlement reached with the Department of Interior for the mishandling of a trust fund managed for Native Americans and settlements for 4 water right lawsuits filed by Native American tribes. For more news and information, visit blacktalkradionetwork.com.